The anime starts on the city road, and it seems our protagonist is being pursued by the police. He is accompanied by a girl named Angie. Our protagonist tells her to calm down and assures her that they will lose the police soon. Suddenly, the police start shooting, and our protagonist gets nervous. He enters a tunnel and tells Angie to open a bag. This bag contains bombs and money. They throw it at the police, causing them to explode. Upon exiting the tunnel, they spot a military tank with the letters BST. Upon reading BST, our protagonist is shocked. Later, on the news, they show how a type of drug was infecting people. It is said that this drug had been invented 30 years ago. It was causing multiple mutations in the patients. The people infected by this drug were called bloodivores. We see our protagonist drinking something with one of his companions. Out of nowhere, a girl asks for help. Apparently, a bloodivore is attacking her, since he feeds on her blood. After attacking the girl, the police arrive and eliminate the troublemaker. At that moment, Angie arrives and tells the guys it's better to leave. The brown-haired guy gets furious seeing the bloodivore being beaten. Next, we see our protagonist and his companions robbing a bank. The manager says there isn't enough money, but the brown-haired guy seems not to care and points a shotgun at him. He warns that it's better to give the safe password. The man keeps saying he doesn't know it. The protagonist says he's telling the truth because a 12-digit password is randomly sent to the server, and there are more than 100 million password possibilities. But our protagonist decides to hack the system and change the password. The manager says it's impossible, but upon hearing this, the protagonist says he hates the word impossible. After some time, he manages to open the safe by hacking the password. Satisfied, the protagonist takes out his phone to call Chen Fong to come pick them up. The manager asks if they are bloodivores, as their collars give them away. He offers them a lot of money to buy blood but asks them to let him go in return. Then he's struck in the face with the shotgun's butt. The brown-haired guy says it's better if he shuts up and stops underestimating. Angie tells Mai-Lu that there's exactly 650,000 yen to steal. After hearing this, they run off with the money. Mai-Lu yells at Win-Ko that they'd better get out of there. Everyone starts running, but Win-Ko says they should steal more and that the plan doesn't matter. Upon hearing this and seeing the money falling from Mai-Lu's backpack, Win-Ko decides to stop and collect the money. Suddenly, a young child appears. He was looking for his mother. Win-Ko wonders what a child is doing there. He apologizes and points the shotgun at the child. However, Angie steps in front of him, telling Win-Ko that he's just a child. Angrily, he tells her that the child has seen their faces, so there's no other option. When Win-Ko fires, Mai-Lu nudges the shotgun's aim, causing the shot to miss. At that moment, the child starts crying, and Angie recalls the screams of the woman attacked by the bloodivore hours before that incident. We see BST helicopters flying over the area. The collars they wore around their necks, called DGPS, had been activated on Angie's neck. Suddenly, Chen Fong enters, telling them they need to leave because the police are about to arrive. Everyone is about to get in the car, but Win-Ko points a gun at Angie's head, saying she can't go with them because her DGPS would track them wherever they go. Angie agrees and says they should leave her there. Mai-Lu refuses and says they will all go together. He then throws the money and leaves with Angie, leaving Win-Ko and Chen Fong behind. Angie asks him why he did that, and he replies that it's because he wants to be by her side always. Some time later, we see that everyone has been arrested by the police. The news describes them as 4 underage bloodivores. In the police department, an agent is interrogating Mai-Lu, but he seems completely uninterested in the conversation. The investigator asks Mai-Lu why he robbed the bank if it was obvious he didn't need the money. Mai-Lu responds that he was just out for a walk with his friends. We see Win-Ko yelling at Mai-Lu for changing the money back, calling him a damn traitor. Mai-Lu says he doesn't care about what's happening and that they can add that crime to his list since, as a minor, he'll be out in a few days. Upon hearing this, the investigator grabs him by the shirt, asking if he didn't care about the lives of the 15 people he killed. Seeing this, Mai-Lu feels guilty. Next, we see 2 high-ranking individuals talking. One of them is named Mai Tenju. He takes responsibility for everything that happened with the kids and offers an apology, stating that he will be satisfied with the results. The news shows the crime suspects on screen, and all the people in the courtroom shout at them. Everyone is furious about the 15 deaths. Mai-Lu wonders who could have been responsible for the 15 deaths, as Angie was always with him. Chen Fong never entered the building and only provided support. He suspects Win-Ko but says that it couldn't have been him due to his brain. Chen Fong asks Mai-Lu if he was the culprit. At that moment, Angie says it's all her fault. The judge tells them to be quiet and begins listing all the crimes committed, with the sentence for all of it being death. Win-Ko starts crying, saying he didn't kill anyone. Next, we see Mai-Lu being taken to his cell, where he meets Mai Tenju. Mai-Lu asks asks if he came to taunt him or to save him. Mai Tenju tells him that this time he won't be able to save him. Then, Mai Tenju asks if he managed to find his mother. This prompts Mai Liu to grab him by the neck and slam him against the wall, telling him not to speak about her and to stop acting like a father right now. Mai Tenju grabs his arm, burning it, and tells him that they are no longer father and son. Mai Liu lies on the floor, and Mai Tenju leaves. We see Mai Tenju apparently giving a press conference about D+ genetics. He introduces himself as the president of the BST. He then says he will show the results of his research, and that the appropriate name for it is the Child of Peace. Everyone thought this was a new invention. At that moment, a child appears with a pretty girl. She introduces herself as the head of BST research and says her name is Shimon Guching. She also says that the little boy is her son, mentioning that this child was the first bloodivore of all. The people present are shocked. Shimon mentions that this child is her and Mai Tenju's son. They say he is now 5 years old and hasn't shown any bloodivore behavior. This little boy is Mai Liu. Shimon says that he is the last hope for humanity. We see everyone taking photos of him, but Mai Liu sees BST personnel shooting at him. Then he wakes up. Apparently, it was all a dream. He wakes up in a small room with 2 people he apparently doesn't know. Mai Liu is disoriented and then opens his backpack. It contains his clothes and a weapon. As Mai Liu is about to open one of the people's backpacks, they grab him and put him in a hole. Then, the brown-haired girl wakes up not knowing where she is. The red-haired guy asks them if they were also sentenced to death. Mai Liu remembers how, on their way to jail, he and his companions were shot at by the BST, trying to eliminate each of them. He realizes that, as there are no traces of blood, his friends are also alive. Then the red-haired guy asks for their names and the reason they're in jail. Mai Liu mentions that he committed a robbery, while the girl named Cho Ifan committed financial fraud. The boy introduces himself as Li Xin and mentions that he is a professional assassin. Li Xin, upon realizing they've been given weapons, understands that the battle will begin soon. Suddenly, a strange sound begins to bother them, and the door of the room is suddenly open. They see many identical rooms to theirs, and people sentenced to death emerge from there, all heavily armed. Out of nowhere, a voice speaks and opens a giant door from which a girl appears. She tells them that she has good news, which is that their death sentences have been cancelled. Mai Liu realizes that this girl is Angie, and when he's about to speak to her, the real Angie grabs him from behind with a sword and says that it's not her who's speaking. The girl mentions that they will now live in Aori for the rest of their lives. A man gets angry and grabs the girl by the arm, exposing her in front of everyone. Suddenly, this inmate is kicked by Chen Fong. The inmate stands up to fight and manages to hit Chen Fong. Mai Liu tells him not to fight, mentioning something about his collar, but he's interrupted by another inmate who points a gun at his head. Seeing Angie hide behind Mai Liu, he tells Mai Liu that he better hand the girl over. On the other hand, we also see how inmates surround Cho Ifan. Suddenly, Win Ko arrives with his shotgun, telling him it would be best to lower the weapon. When Mai Liu thanks him, Win Ko says he has many questions to ask him. We see Chen Fong still being beaten by the inmate. This inmate's collar had a countdown. When it reaches 0, it explodes, destroying the inmate's head. Everyone becomes nervous. Then, the girl who entered at the beginning mentions that the collars are to prevent them from killing each other, and if they try to remove them, they'll explode anyway. Many prisoners get angry and want to attack the girl, but Chen Fong continues to defend her. Mai Liu tells Chen Fong to step back since she's not Angie. The girl tells them what their mission is, to survive in Aori. Later, investigators watch the assault by the BST on the van transporting the prisoners. One of the investigators mentions that they covered the tracks of terrorism quite well. Suddenly, he sees a bloodstain on the truck. At that moment, he receives a phone call and asks the person on the other end if they could send him the report of the people killed or missing in that incident. Changing the scene, we see how the girl's body was just a simple robot, and a gigantic monster emerges from it. Apparently, despite being shot at, the monster is not harmed. Mai Liu decides to run hand in hand with Angie while the prisoners continue to attack the monster. Chen Fong appears to be immobilized by everything that's happening. Angie asks Mai Liu where he's going, and he responds that there should be an exit somewhere. Suddenly, the monsters multiply, killing as many prisoners as possible. Cho Ifan hides, praying not to be killed. Win Ko, feeling trapped, doesn't know what to do, and someone dies next to him. The monsters continue to hunt for survivors. Mai Liu and Angie escape, and they encounter Cho Ifan. She pleads with them to rescue her. When Mai Liu is pushed back by a great force, Li Xin mentions that this power belongs to a hemomancer. We see Mai Liu suspended in the air, not knowing what's happening. Suddenly, he falls to the ground and gets hurt. When a monster is about to devour Angie, Li Xin saves her by cutting the monster with his swords. The surviving inmates are trying to destroy the door with TNT to escape. but when they ignite the dynamite, they are devoured by the monsters. The dynamite falls right in front of Chen Feng, and he decides to grab the TNT and throw it towards the door. This causes a collapse that saves Angie and Cho from another monster. We see how the dynamite managed to open the door, so all the prisoners run out of there. When Angie was about to be devoured, Mai Lu rescues her with incredible speed. Cho Ifan asks for their help because she didn't want to die there. After saving her, they fly and enter a ventilation duct. As they are about to enter, Mai Lu sees Li Xin. Li Xin was eliminating the monsters very easily, but it seems he was being cornered. When the prisoners pass through the door, they realize there was no way out. Suddenly, everyone starts dying because of the monsters. In the ventilation ducts, Angie is worried about Chen Feng and Win Ko, but Mai Lu tells her that they will save them later. Angie realizes there are many ducts, but only one of them could lead them out. Cho Ifan asks Mai Lu if he was a hemomancer. Upon hearing this, Mai Lu asks Angie for the gun. Mai Lu mentions that not all bloodivores were hemomancers, but those who had special abilities. Mai Lu starts shooting bullets through the ventilation ducts to find the right way out. While doing this, he wonders what's happening and who brought them there. He says that apparently he wasn't the only hemomancer. We return to the prisoners, and we see a blonde-haired boy creating a barrier with the cells they were in. Apparently, he was also a hemomancer. Mai Lu and the others manage to escape and find themselves in an office. This office seemed to have been abandoned for a long time. Mai Lu turns and blushes upon seeing Angie. Then he mentions that they should find clothes for her. Upon investigating the place, Mai Lu sees a map of Aori along with photos of his parents. He realizes that the building should be completed in 2 years, but it looks like it has been abandoned for over 50 years. Mai Lu begins to remember the past. A boy named Wang Feng startles him. Suddenly, Mai Lu looks out the window. At that moment, he sees BST trucks. Wang Feng asks if the BST was there to find him, but he answers that no, as they have never come to fetch him at school before. Suddenly, a teacher enters the classroom, and he was injured. He tells them they must run quickly because there's a bloodivore. All the children run out, but the teacher tells Mai Lu that he should stay there. Mai Lu asks the teacher not to leave him alone, but he ignores him. Then we hear the children screaming for help, and we see the bloodivore heading towards Mai Lu. Next, we can see Angie changing her clothes, and Cho Ifan asks her about her relationship with Mai Lu. She also asks if they are dating. Angie responds that they are not. Cho laughs and tells her that she is guilty of her husband. She did this because she was jealous, as her husband should have been hers alone. After that, Cho Ifan grabs Angie's squeezing them and saying that they are quite large. We return to the past, where we see the bloodivore taking Mai Lu as a hostage. He climbs to the top of the school building. Apparently, what the bloodivore wanted was to talk to Mai Tenju. When Mai Tenju talks to him, he mentions that he won't do what he asks. The bloodivore laughs and says his name is Rod, telling him they better negotiate before he does something bad to his son. Mai Tenju tells him it's useless, and no one could escape from Aori. Mai Lu cries and begs his father to save him. Rod asks him what he will do about it, and Mai Tenju tells him he won't follow his orders. Then, he apologizes to Mai Lu and gives the order to shoot. Rod tells Mai Lu that it's sad that everyone despised him, and no one cared about his life. Suddenly, the teacher arrives. Rod is shot, so he throws Mai Lu to the ground. We see how the teacher and all the students were negotiating with Rod not to harm them, effectively selling Mai Lu's life. The investigator sees that all death sentence prisoners have died in an unknown manner. We see Mai Lu also on that list. When he tries to access his computer's database, he realizes he doesn't have the permissions. Quickly, he realizes it's because of the BST. After investigating for a while, he realizes that all of Mai Lu's companions came from the same orphanage. This was a bloodivore orphanage. At that moment, he receives a call and leaves the place. We see a deteriorated and apparently abandoned place where Mai Lu is with a mirror, checking if everything is clear. He tells the girls to follow him and not to leave his side. As they advance, they are surprised by how vast the place they are in is. On the wall, we see the number 4. They were on the 4th floor of the building, on the same floor where those creatures were. Angie mentions that it's impossible because they had gone very far through the ventilation ducts. Mai Lu says that it's a distortion of space-time since the past, present, and future all intersect at that point, although he's not entirely sure. Cho asks Mai Lu how long they will be in that place. He replies that he doesn't know, and the only thing he knows is that they are alive. As they walk, they see a place with many cracks, scratches, and hits. Mai Lu asks them to be silent while looking down a dark corridor. The prisoners continue to fight for their lives, praying that the barrier holding up won't collapse. They all began to stop the barrier from falling on them. Out of nowhere, a prisoner pulls out a grenade to end it all. All the prisoners struggle to take the grenade away from the inmate who wanted to commit suicide. side. Seeing how no one could do it, Winkeo decides to shoot the man in the head. At that moment, he bursts into tears for having killed that man, mentioning that he didn't want to be a killer, and that it was the first time he had done something like that. Next, we see Chen Fong's memories. A couple of kids who bullied and beat him, but Winkeo always defended him, even if he took a few punches. The two of them were ostracized by the other children just for being bloodivores. Winkeo cried for all that was happening to him. Chen Fong grabs Winkeo's uniform, telling him he needs to calm down, and also mentioning that they will get out of there soon. Then, he asks the blonde boy to open the door slightly to get out because if they continued like that, the demons would somehow get in. Everyone refuses to open the doors, but Chen Fong threatens to throw a grenade if they don't. Returning to Mai Liu, he tells us that his powers allow him to create gravity points and fall onto them, as if it were teleportation. However, there is a limit to the distance and weight. If he lifts too much weight or moves too much, he would break. His limit was 10 meters. While he explains that, they are attacked by a monster. Mai Liu manages to impale its head with a stake. He tries to damage it in the head in the same way Li Xin did to harm them. While he fights the monster, Angie and Cho flee, but another one appears in front of them. Angie takes out her gun and shoots the monster after telling Cho to escape through the door. However, Cho betrays her and pushes her towards the monster, escaping on her own. Mai Liu, seeing this, makes the two monsters collide, saving Angie. We see Angie is injured in the abdomen, and the wound is very deep. While Mai Liu wants to help her, the demons rise and go after them. But at that moment, Cho Ifan returns, asking Mai Liu to go with her. Mai Liu flies to where she was, and when he was about to grab her hand, he passes by. Cho Ifan wonders why Mai Liu abandoned her and was left alone in front of the monster. As they flee, we see how the monster was stabbed in the heart by a metal bar. Mai Liu and Angie fall to the ground. When he looks up, he sees the monster flying towards them. It falls on top of Mai Liu. With the monster's fall, the floor breaks, and Mai Liu falls down. Before losing consciousness, he sees Angie by his side. Chen Fong was climbing the barrier to get out where the monsters were. As he tried to escape, one of the cells fell, and all the prisoners wondered if Chen Fong did it on purpose. Upon seeing the android's face, Chen Fong says that it surprised him greatly when he saw her. Then, he finds a way to get out, but it was very narrow. Mai Liu wakes up and goes in search of Angie. He checks her pulse and says her heartbeat is very weak. Upon lifting her shirt, he realizes the wound is severe. Mai Liu mentions that he doesn't have time, so he grabs the gun that was on the floor. Then, he takes a bullet and starts hitting it with a stone. Afterward, he creates fire to cauterize Angie's wound, and she screams in pain. Mai Liu turns to fight the monster, but it disappears. Apparently, it was screaming because those were its last words. Chen Fong was sneaking through that narrow corridor. When he's about to finally get out, he falls and drops the grenade he had in his hand. Upon falling, he encounters a boy with long hair. Chen Fong wonders where he is while asking the boy what he's doing there. The boy, in an intimidating voice, tells him he doesn't know. He was just asleep, and when he woke up, he was already there. Hearing this, Chen Fong realizes that he doesn't know what's happening. The long-haired boy grabs Chen Fong by the neck, asking where he can find Mai Tenju. Meanwhile, Mai Tenju meets with some people who apparently are important. They tell him that he was summoned because he gave his son Mai Liu a sapphire, and now they were receiving signals from it in Aori. Mai Tenju says he gave it because it was necessary, but one of the people there gets angry, saying it was very reckless. The person sitting at the head of the table asks everyone to calm down. Then, he asks Mai Tenju if there were good reasons to give the sapphire to his son. Mai Tenju says yes because he had considered all the possibilities of giving it to him. This way, they will search for him. After this, he mentions that the person who will search for him will be someone from his blood bond. After this, the meeting ends. Mai Liu was breaking down a wall to escape from the place while remembering everything that had happened to him and his friends. At that moment, he bursts into tears, wondering if this would be his end. Suddenly, the wound his father had given him in the arm that day he saw him started to glow. This wound had a sapphire. Upon touching it, many lights and blue hexagons came out of it. It communicates with Mai Liu, as it seems to be like a smart computer. The computer shows him a lot of information about bloodivores. Mai Liu is interested in information about blood transfusion among bloodivores. The computer begins to provide all the necessary information. Mai Liu asks the computer to scan him to find out if he can give blood to another bloodivore. Mai Liu's blood was special because he was half human, half bloodivore, but it would still be used to save Angie. Mai Liu asks the computer for information about Aori. The computer explains that Aori was once called Aok. However, with the growth of the bloodivores and people's fear, the BST decided to eliminate Aoka. It is now known as Aori. Mai Liu asks the computer about the death row inmates. This information Fong required a password, so Mai Lu couldn't access that information. Then, he injures himself to give some of his blood to Angie. Afterwards, Chen Fong falls to the ground, and the orange-haired boy mocks him because he had a grenade. Chen Fong says he doesn't know what's happening outside. There, a monster enters through one of the free slots. Chen Fong tells the boy he must run, but the boy kills the monster with a single punch, causing the whole barrier to collapse. Chen Fong asks him who the heck he was, but the boy was being cornered by the monsters. They attack him, but he easily eliminates them one by one. The prisoners are impressed, but the yellow-haired boy says he's one of the disqualified, and his name was Liu Yao. He was a Class S criminal, and he was worse than all those demons there. When Angie drinks Mai Lu's blood, she attacks his neck. Apparently, the blood transfusion went wrong. We see how Liu Yao eliminated all the monsters. This makes the prisoners happy, but right there, he is attacked by someone, while Mai Lu is touched by a strange blue shadow. The person who had attacked Liu Yao was Li Xin. Apparently, these two already knew each other. Li Xin starts attacking Liu Yao with his swords, but it seems that this doesn't make it difficult for Liu Yao to defend himself. Liu Yao tells Li Xin to stop holding back, asking if it's the prisoner's fault that he's not fighting seriously, so he starts attacking them with the prisoners. When Li Xin gets close enough, Liu Yao steals one of his swords, mentioning that it will be impossible to beat him. Li Xin takes out another knife from his pocket and tries to stab Liu Yao, but he stops him with his hand, then steals the knife and cuts his arm. Liu Yao puts Li Xin in a hold. Then, he bites his neck to drink his blood, but he ends up regretting it, telling him he wants to give him a reward. He lifts his head and tells him to cut his neck. By doing this, we see that his collar has the number 399. Liu Yao wonders what that was, so the blonde boy tells him what it was. Liu Yao asks the boy who he is. He describes himself as a hemomancer, telling Liu Yao that he's his fan and that thanks to him, they're alive. Liu Yao asks for more details about the collar. The boy tells him that if he killed someone, his collar would drop until it reached 0, and there it would explode. Liu Yao punches the boy, and his counter reaches 400. Apparently, Liu Yao had killed 400 people, which meant that the more he killed, the more he would survive. Mai Lu is spoken to by his mother in a dream. She tells him he must be stronger, then she leaves. Mai Lu wakes up, and Angie grabs his hand. It seems both of them are fine, when suddenly, a gust of wind brushes past them. It appears that the wall had opened. Mai Lu picks up Angie, and they walk along a very narrow edge. He tells Angie not to look down. He informs Angie how he explored the building and that there should be an infirmary nearby. Angie thanks Mai Lu for rescuing her. In the past, we see how Mai Lu meets Chen Fong, Win Ko, and Angie. They wonder why Mai Lu is there since he is not an orphan. Mai Lu was crying because apparently Angie resembled his mother. Upon seeing him cry, Angie gives her stuffed animal to Mai Lu. At that moment, Mai Lu promised to protect Angie at all costs. Suddenly, a flying monster passes by them. All the prisoners were trying to push the door to open it, and it seems they succeeded. Liu Yao talks to Li Xin, demanding an explanation of what's happening there, but he doesn't want to talk to Liu Yao. Win Ko suggests they should leave, but Chen Fong says they should find Angie and Mai Lu before that. Apparently, Win Ko doesn't like his idea. Suddenly, Liu Yao arrives and undresses. This was to give his clothes to Chen Fong. Win Ko asks Liu Yao to save them. The flying monster apparently was a dragon. Angie, upon seeing this, tells Mai Lu that he better leave her and go without her. Mai Lu refuses, but she is so badly wounded. She tells him to take care of Win Ko and Chen Fong as they were like family to her. Then, she says her goodbyes with an I love you. Apparently, Win Ko was bothered that Liu Yao asked him for help, since he was a death row inmate. He approaches the door and easily opens it with just one finger. Liu Yao says he won't help anyone, as the useless ones should die. But all the prisoners, including Win Ko, decide to follow Liu Yao. They thought it was their only way to survive. Chen Fong tells Win Ko not to go, as they should look for Mai Lu and Angie, but he leaves, calling them traitors. This way, Chen Fong remains alone. Mai Lu answers Angie's question of whether he is really an orphan. He tells her that Mai Tenju is his father and is the leader of the BST, and his mother was a regular human. With Mai Lu's efforts to find his mother, he found them in the orphanage. The investigator goes to the orphanage and asks the gatekeeper about Mai Lu. She says she doesn't know him and mentions that she has worked there for over 30 years, so it's impossible for him to be there. The detective notices a peculiar stuffed animal. The gatekeeper tells him it was a donation, so the president asks her who donated it. Then, the gatekeeper goes to fetch the donor list. When she leaves, the detective realizes the stuffed animal has a microphone. Chen Fong asks Li Xin what happened to Mai Lu and Angie. He tells him how Mai Lu used his powers to escape through the ventilation duct. Chen Fong is surprised that Mai Lu is a hemomancer. At that moment, they see the trail of death left by Lu Yao before he saved them. Chen Fong asks Li Xin about his relationship with Lu Yao. Li Xin tells him he doesn't like answering questions. He only tells him that the android that looked like Angie was his guide in Aori, but he didn't know what would happen after that. At that moment, the monsters begin to disappear. Chen Fong, upon looking inside a monster, realizes that one of them had a crystal in a human shape. When he picks it up and examines it, he starts to feel strange. He is drawn to that sensation. Li Xin takes it from his hand, and the crystal starts to melt, burning him. Li Xin tells Chen Fong that they should look for Mai Lu, as something was piquing his curiosity. The detective is investigating all the microphones inside the stuffed animals. These had different audio recordings. In one of them, you can hear Mai Lu and his friends discussing how the orphanage was going to be destroyed. They think of a way to protect it, and Angie asks how much money they need to prevent its destruction. Mai Lu replies that they don't want money, but they need the land. If they continue like this, they will end up on the streets. Mai Lu mentions that the Seiken Bank and the real estate agency were connected, so the land deed should be there. If they obtain it, they can save the orphanage. Mai Lu says that if they fail, they'll be in prison forever. That's why they decided to rob the bank. Mai Lu thoroughly investigated the bank, believing they could overcome any unforeseen circumstances. After remembering this, Mai Lu starts recalling the voices of his companions during the bank heist. He begins to hyperventilate and lose his sanity. At that moment, a monster appears behind Mai Lu. He gets up from the ground with an angry expression and slowly walks towards the monster until he attacks. Li Xin and Chen Fong walk down a hallway, searching for Mai Lu. They find traces of a fight but no clue of his whereabouts. Suddenly, a sound starts causing them headache. Li Xin takes out a knife, using the vibration to pinpoint the source of the sound. Meanwhile, we see Mai Lu fighting the monster. Once he knocks it down, he starts hitting it repeatedly in the head with a rock. However, at that moment, Angie is attacked by another monster. While distracted, Mai Lu is grabbed by the monster. He pleads for them to stop, but Angie is taken away. Mai Lu wakes up from his faint with a little girl on top of him. When he asks her who she is, she just leaves without a word. Mai Lu starts walking and realizes he's in an abandoned restaurant. Looking to the side, he sees Chen Fong and Li Xin. An angry Chen Fong hits Mai Lu, calling him an idiot for not protecting Angie. Chen Fong cries, asking Mai Lu why he didn't keep his promise. Mai Lu punches him back and apologizes, saying he couldn't do anything. They continue fighting while Li Xin watches. Both of them cry and lament. At night, Chen Fong says that Li Xin saved them because both had fainted. He asks what they should do now, and Mai Lu says he doesn't know. Frustrated, Chen Fong decides to go look for Win Ko. Li Xin asks Mai Lu what happened to Cho Ifan. When he receives no answer, he leaves Mai Lu alone. We see Chen Fong crying next to a photo of all of them together as children. Li Xin, at that moment, bites and eats one of his knives. Meanwhile, the prisoners, along with Lu Yao, break the bars of an abandoned house. The little blonde girl climbs on top of Angie. After licking her, she falls asleep on her. At that moment, Angie wakes up. We see a breeze of wind covering the whole place. Meanwhile, a person walks toward Mai Lu and stands in front of him. This person was Angie. When Mai Lu raises his head, he doesn't see anyone, just an open door. He gets up and goes to see who opened the door. When he goes outside, he sees Angie. She asks him where they are. Chen Fong arrives and asks Mai Lu if something happened. Upon seeing Angie, Chen Fong quickly jumps to embrace her amidst a sea of tears. Li Xin says it's impossible that she has come back to life. Angie can't believe they thought she was dead. Mai Lu asks Angie if she remembers what happened, but she doesn't seem to remember well. Angie recounts that when she woke up, she saw a little blonde girl in a dress. But when he tried to talk to her, she bit him and ran away. Suddenly, the girl was up on the ceiling. Everyone wondered how she got up there. Chen Fong says her name is Yea. Since she didn't speak well and only said Yea, they named her that. Chen Fong threatens her to come down, and she does, but she stomps on Chen Fong's face. Then she hides behind Angie. It turns out Yea is also a bloodivore. Chen Fong explains how they discovered her. We go back to the past, and the annoying sound that bothered Chen Fong and Li Xin came from a door. Upon opening this door, they found a strange room. The sound became increasingly unbearable, but Li Xin kept walking. At the end of the room, they found Yea. Chen Fong runs out with Yea, and then the room starts melting. While Yea licks Angie's face, Mai Lu wonders how Angie came back to life. Mai Lu mentions that the monsters he defeated also melted. He asks Chen Fong to take him to the room where Yea was. As they walk, Chen Fong asks Mai Lu why he wants to go to that room. Mai Lu explains that the sound that gave him a headache was the same as when they opened the door to welcome them to Aoi. Mai Lu thinks they teleported Ye there, so he wants to investigate the room. Suddenly, Angie communicates with Mai Lu through the radio that Li Xin gave them. Li Xin told them not to go too far because the communicators didn't have much range. Chen Fong wonders if it was a good idea to leave Li Xin alone with the girls. Then, we see that Li Xin is watching Ye, and he's sweating and nervous. He leaves, but not before asking Angie why she was there since they didn't seem as bad as the other prisoners. She replies that she doesn't know anything about Aoi. Li Xin then asks why that android looked like her. Without a chance to respond, Li Xin grabs Ye by the neck. Seeing that her counter read 5, Mai Lu and Chen Fong manage to spot other prisoners, but they hide because these prisoners have weapons. Suddenly, Angie calls Mai Lu. This nearly exposes them to the prisoners. Angie tells Mai Lu to come back quickly because Ye's counter dropped suddenly. He tells Angie to take care of Ye and not do anything sudden. Suddenly, they hear gunshots. Mai Lu surrenders and asks the prisoners for help, requesting that they take them to Lu Yao. Angie doesn't understand what's going on, but Li Xin tells her the shots were probably from Lu Yao's people. She doesn't know who he is, but Li Xin informs her that he's a highly dangerous Class S criminal and is likely planning revenge on the BST. Mai Lu and Chen Fong are escorted by the prisoners. They discuss how to raise Ye's counter. Suddenly, they're attacked by some sort of tentacles that the prisoners. Chen Fong is about to be devoured, but Mai Lu manages to save him. Then we see the prisoners trying to tame a beast that looks like a wolf, but it's too strong and quickly breaks free, attacking Wen Kao. Mai Lu and Chen Fong flee the area where the prisoners were killed. Suddenly, they hear gunshots, and Chen Fong thinks it's Lu Yao's men. Wen Kao and the other prisoners keep shooting at the beast, but it doesn't seem to affect it at all. Wen Kao is running out of bullets but is quickly saved by Mai Lu. Instead of being grateful, he gets angry for being saved by Mai Lu. Mai Lu then leaves and starts fighting the beast. Wen Kao is impressed that Mai Lu is a hemomancer. When he manages to defeat the beast, we see that the beast was just a child, and it returns to normal after being knocked out. Chen Fong extends his hand to Wen Kao, asking him to go with them. However, he pulls away, saying they're no longer related and that they should stop interfering. Wen Kao tells Mai Lu to leave, but Mai Lu says he's happy because now Wen Kao is famous. Wen Kao mentions that he has nothing to do with them anymore, so they should leave. Mai Lu tells him he wasn't there to see him. A prisoner tells Mai Lu that the child carried a doll before turning into that beast. He was like a human sphinx. Wen Kao tells the prisoners to check on Mai Lu, and then take them to Lu Yao. Li Xin is talking to Angie when he suddenly starts feeling unwell. Angie asks if he's okay, but he simply leaves. We can suddenly see swords emerging from all over Li Xin's body. Chen Fong, after what they said, realizes they also found a red stone in the shape of a person. He tells Mai Lu that he touched it, but it melted in Li Xin's hand. Mai Lu says that the stone awakens the power of a hemomancer, but this causes chaos and many disasters to occur with. Mai Lu arrives with Lu Yao. He speaks to the door to be attended by Lu Yao, but there's no response. Mai Lu shouts to Lu Yao that Li Xin's powers are out of control. Lu Yao comes out of the room, but behind him was Cho Ifen. Mai Lu is surprised to see her again. Lu Yao tells them to come in and discuss Li Xin. He tells Chen Fong he shouldn't remain half naked. Mai Lu explains the situation they're facing with Ye. Lu Yao tells them he won't help them kill any monsters for that girl. Mai Lu says that's not what they're looking for. They only want weapons to capture a monster for Ye. This causes Lu Yao to burst into laughter. Lu Yao asks Cho Ifen for her opinion on the matter. She tells him that he's telling the truth in almost everything. Mai Lu thinks that Cho Ifen's power is to know if they're telling the truth or not. Lu Yao asks why he wants to save that girl. He responds that she saved Angie, and he also wants to return the favor, but he also believes that he can help them solve the problem in Aoi. Apparently, he was telling the truth. Seeing this, Lu Yao raises the bed with all the weapons they had. Then, Angie is looking for Ye, and she's hiding under the bed. When Angie approaches, she sees that Li Xin has weapons coming out of his body. Angie shouts to Ye to run, but Li Xin collapses the entire building where they were. Chen Fong is about to leave with the weapons, but Lu Yao doesn't allow it. He asks Mai Lu if he's also a hemomancer. Then he asks how much Mai Lu knows about hemomancers. Seeing that Mai Lu knows very little about it, he opens a door, and behind this door was the barrier of Aoi. Lu Yao tells Mai Lu not to get too close, otherwise he'd be absorbed. Thanks to that barrier, they are trapped in Aoi. The only way out was to deactivate that barrier. Mai Lu asks if they could escape by destroying the barrier. Lu Yao extends his hand and says they should work together to remove that barrier, but Mai Lu says his power isn't that useful. Upon hearing this, Liu Yao pushes Mai Lu towards the portals. However, he can easily escape thanks to his power. Liu Yao says it's incredible, and his power is quite good, but he tells him that if someone with that power wasn't his friend, they were his enemy. After saying that, he attacks Mai Lu. He manages to dodge it, but Liu Yao still manages to land a few blows. Mai Lu grabs Chen Fong and manages to escape the place thanks to a fragmentation grenade. However, even though they escaped, they left their radio behind. When Ko grabs it and listens as Angie calls for help. Mai Lu is flying outside the place with Chen Fong. When they land on a building, Chen Fong asks if all the bombs are okay. Mai Lu confirms that they are. Then, Chen Fong asks Mai Lu what kind of deal he made with Liu Yao, but Mai Lu responds that he made no deal, and that Liu Yao only wanted to help. Mai Lu tells Chen Fong that he turned down the offer. Chen Fong asks why. Mai Lu says it's all because of Cho Ifan, who was a hemomancer capable of reading minds. Mai Lu mentions that it's dangerous to stay there because Cho Ifan holds a grudge against him for not having rescued her. Mai Lu wonders what the relationship between his father and Liu Yao is, then he leaves with Chen Fong. In the city, we see the investigator with another researcher. The researcher mentions that Shimon Guching was on the list of the investigation. This person was Mai Lu's mother. The researcher mentions that even though she had disappeared, donations to the orphanage continued to appear from unknown people. They mention that Mai Lu's mother was transferring money from the bank to the orphanage as a form of money laundering. The senior investigator, not having cigarettes, decides to get out of the car for some fresh air. However, right after he exits, a container falls on the car, completely destroying. The investigator starts running, and strange people begin shooting at him. The person responsible for shooting is a girl with green hair. The detective manages to hide and pulls out a gun. Suddenly, more people arrive and shoot him in the abdomen, but he kills them with his weapon. Then, we see Angie and Ye hiding from Li Xin. Ye is screaming, and Angie covers her mouth to prevent them from being discovered. Li Xin manages to find them, but he doesn't seem to attack them. Instead, he's killing monsters that are coming after them. Angie and Ye manage to escape unharmed. Meanwhile, Liu Yao's followers are loading many vans with explosives and weapons. Their mission with these explosives is to capture a monster. Then, the cars depart to carry out their mission. Angie and Ye continue to flee but are caught by Li Xin. He attacks them, but Mai Lu manages to save them by taking Li Xin away from them. Chen Fong tells them that Li Xin's hemomancy has awakened, and because of this, he can't control his power. Li Xin chases after Mai Lu. He tells the others to run, and he instructs Chen Fong to take them to that room and to please take care of Ye. Mai Lu realizes he can't afford to lose Li Xin, but is thinking of a plan that might work. Li Xin knocks him down, and Mai Lu slowly walks into a dark place. Suddenly, he starts screaming. By doing this, the giant worm emerges from its cave and takes Li Xin away. Mai Lu apologizes, but that was the only way to save himself. Angie is worried, so she asks Chen Fong what Mai Lu's plan was to get rid of Li Xin. Then, Chen Fong tells her what Mai Lu was about to do and explains how they will get Ye to activate the explosives, killing the monster in the building. This would ensure Ye's survival and their escape. When Mai Lu thought Li Xin was dead, he emerges, fighting against the monster. Apparently, his powers keep growing, and he attacks the worm with many swords coming out of his back. When Li Xin manages to kill it, a giant monster emerges from the abandoned place. Instead of giving up, Li Xin decides to unleash all his power. Angie and the others hear the monster roar, so they decide to go where Mai Lu is. And that's how the first season of this anime ends. If you've reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you've been one of the few people to make it this far. So comment the word blood in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.